just to introduce to you Michelle, in this incarnation, known as Catherine Sager Pringle in 1844. She broke her leg on the trail somewhere.
Oh.
And that was way back somewhere after Fort Laramie.
And her dad is kind of old and not very good in health.
With one leg?
So,
with a broken leg.
Here's in her own words what happened.
One day, 4 buffalo ran between our wagon and the one behind.
4 buffalo.
Feeble, father seized his gun and gave chase to them. This imprudent act frustrated him again, and it soon became apparent that his days were numbered. He was fully conscious of the fact, but could not be reconciled to the thought of leaving his arms and family in such precarious circumstances. This is still my part.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The evening before his death, we crossed Green River and camped on the bank. Looking where I lay helpless, he said, "Poor child, what will become of you?" Captain Shaw found him weeping bitterly. He said his last hour had come and his heart was filled with anguish for his family. His wife was ill, the children small, and one likely to be a cripple. They had no relatives near, and a long journey lay before them. In piteous tones, he begged the captain to take charge of them and see them through. This he stoutly promised. Father was buried the next day on the banks of Green River. His coffin was made of 2 troughs dug out of the body of a tree.
Thank you. Just one of more than 3,000 people who died along the trail over a period of years. So, anyway, right now there's going to be a nice, smooth, mostly downhill and then flat run all the way to what the pioneers called Summit Prairie, but today it's called Summit Meadow. But just before we get going downhill, we'll just briefly slow down. We won't maybe even stop fully, but I want to, well, unless somebody wants to take a picture, there's one more sign to where the real Barlow Trail is, and it goes straight through this forest here, but I would not recommend taking any kind of bike there. There are too many fallen trees, it's muggy and marshy and mosquitoes and everything. Maybe try hiking there someday.
And apparently the cattle didn't like this tall grass here. It's sour, I think, and it also, I don't know, did you notice how sharp the edges are? It can almost cut you. It's kind of like tall grass, yeah. But they said that they found better grass for the cattle near Trillium Lake, which is a little further down that way, about a mile or 2. Anyway, but read what this one lady says about what they did about food.
Rations grew shorter and shorter. A real relish was prepared for one meal by boiling an antiquated ham bone and adding to the liquid in which it was boiled a few scrapings from the dough pan in which the biscuit from our last meal of flour, which, by the way, was both musty and sour, had been mixed. We still had coffee, and making a huge pot of this fragrant beverage, we gathered around the crackling campfire, our last in the Cascade Mountains, and sipping the nectar from rusty cups and eating salal berries gathered during the day. Pitied folks who had no coffee. Pitied folks.
They pitied the folks who didn't have any coffee. And by the way, I'm not sure that what they had was real coffee, because several of the pioneers mention, actually specifically, not just the word coffee, but they say pea coffee, P-E-A. And I think they were referring to chicory pea. That was used as a coffee substitute. Okay, we'll get back to this. I hope you remember what she just read about how they prepared the food. But in the meantime, Harry Vickers, he was an important man. Did you know that the Barlow Road was a toll road, actually? And they initially set up a toll gate way out there, sort of like 10 miles from Ty Valley, I think.
Kind of like Blazing Saddle?
Huh? Yeah. Anyway, that toll road over the years was moved to 5 different locations. And one of the locations was like right here somewhere. And this guy, Perry Vickers, basically built a cabin here. It was like a trading post. And he was one of the first mountain guides to take people up to Mount Hood. He blazed his own trail up to Mount Hood. This was before timberline, before anything. And he operated this toll gate here for about 5 years. He was apparently a very nice guy. And one day there was a horse thief that stole somebody's gun and was fleeing in the direction of Ty Valley and the Dalles. And somebody deputized him, the local sheriff, whatever. And so a bunch of these people went in pursuit. And unfortunately during that pursuit they apparently caught up with the guy, but it was getting dark. They couldn't see where he was, somewhere near a campfire. In the dark, the guy, the horse thief, shot Perry Vickers. And did you notice that sign there that says Telly Tales? You can actually dial that number, and it will, and then you dial number 21. And that will give you, come closer, I want you to hear this. I have it recorded right here. This is, in the words of Perry Vickers himself, where is it here? Okay, now, ready for this? It's going to come very quickly. Come on.
Summit Meadow. These meadows have been used for centuries by local tribes for summer encampments. In 1845, from the heights of Mount Hood, pioneer Joel Palmer spotted several small prairies that appeared accessible for the emigrant wagons. A corduroy road of logs was built across the swampy ground to access the so-called prairie, and immigrants spent many a day resting here before the horrendous descent off the mountain at Laurel Hill. Now across the road from the meadow are 3 gravestones enclosed by a picket fence, mine included. It's etched simply P. Vickers. Yep, that's me, Perry Vickers. I fell in love with that tremendous mountain looming nearby and the clear trickle of Still Creek running through this meadow. I filed a squatter's claim here in 1866 and built the Summit House to host vacationers and emigrants alike. I became a Barlow Road toll keeper, and as far as I know, I was the first to climb to the summit of Mount Hood, and I offered my services as mountain guide. In 1882, I helped the immigrant Barclay family bury their infant son here. Little did I know, I would soon be buried beside him. Now some say I was a fine fellow, but if I didn't cotton to you, look out. I was a dead shot with my Colt pistol, but it may have been that confidence and my own recklessness that got me killed. A horse thief named Steele stole a rifle down in the valley and headed east of the mountain. Justice of the Peace Rourke and a deputized friend, McIntyre, asked me to join the chase. We 3 headed to White River where we came upon campfires. Now it's a little hazy what happened next, but I ended up alone approaching one campfire and was shot just as I was about to investigate. I fired all rounds of my Colt, but Steele got away. It was a long night, and I died of my wounds the next morning. August 19th, 1883. They brought me back to Summit Meadows and buried me beside the child.
Lisa actually, 2 years ago, she was one of the few who came on a rainy day to do this tour, and she showed me something I didn't know. There's one more grave right here. So yeah, you can rent that. Oops. This marks the grave of baby Morgan. The mother of this baby was named Rachel Morgan, and she was only 25 years old. And she died 2 months earlier when they were in Wyoming. There's a place called Independence Rock. That's where she died. They stayed there a couple of days just to rest, to recruit, as they say. And during their rest period, they cooked up some food in copper kettles, and they got poisoning. Which I don't think it was food poisoning. I think it was actually poison from the kettle. Now, why was it poisonous? Because of the way they cooked. If you listen carefully to the description, they would use the same pot over and over again. They didn't want to waste the fat and whatever was in it, so they just kept pouring more stuff in it, cooking it some more, using the spices that were in there, just add some more ingredients, mix it up again. And it said something that part of the food was sour and musty.
The biscuit flour.
Yeah, and the fact that it's sour means it's acidic, and that leaches out the copper out of the copper vessels. And after days and days of doing that, it can get poisonous. She wasn't the only one. There was apparently a whole group of people that got poisoning. I'm not sure if they all died or not, but she died anyway. So the mother died, and now the baby was left with the rest of the family, and then the baby apparently just not too far, probably within this part that we just bicycled, fell. I'm not sure exactly how she fell, out of the wagon or within the wagon or somewhere. She fell, hit her head, and that was apparently a fatal wound. Sometimes when you get a head injury, then your brain or your liquids or something inside swells, creates a lot of pressure, and then that's what kills you, really. For a while, they say the baby's uncle was actually carrying the baby in his hands, but by the time they got here, the baby died.